Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm just checking to make sure that I am actually live. And it looks like I am. Okay, great. So I am going to make a comment here on the video. Say hello, everyone. We are discussing questions 7 through 12 today on brain fog. Okay, so why am I starting with brain fog? When I first got kind of the troubling symptoms of perimenopause, I started with anxiety. I had horrible, horrible anxiety all of a sudden. I've always had an anxiety disorder, so it wasn't too unheard of for me to have anxiety. But it was definitely like all of a sudden and way worse, like not functional worse. Putting the questions into the chat as well. So you guys can ask me questions about those questions as I'm talking. I'll try and keep the chat open and try and keep aware of it at the same time. So my experiment yesterday worked, answering the questions this way, and then using that as my transcript and editing that down. So I'm going to continue to do that same format until I have 31 questions for brain fog and 29 for sleep, which I'll start working on. I'm going to try and do 6 a day. So that is what we are on about at this point. I'm just going to introduce myself quickly. My name is Jessica. I am in perimenopause, maybe forever, I don't know. 54 and nowhere near being done. I keep thinking that it's over, but then my test results come back that I'm still making hormone follicle stimulating. So I could potentially still just end up getting a period at some point. So I am on a pill to stop that because I have endometriosis. So I've got my phone up in case, anybody wants to send me messages on Messenger and ask me privately, you can. So let's get started. We are on question number 7. Does exercise help? Okay, so a lot of people hate exercise, and I totally get it. I used to hate exercise. I mean, I kind of still hate exercise, to be perfectly honest. Sorry, my son is texting me and I always answer him. Okay. So the full question is, does exercise help? I heard somewhere it does, but it's hard to get motivated to even try to exercise. This question is so valid. I just want to take a moment and say, if this is you, if that's you asking this question, if you're thinking that yourself, you're not alone. A lot of us are struggling with this very same issue. How do you get motivated or even start somewhere? If you're having trouble focusing and you're having trouble concentrating and you're having trouble planning, your executive function is impaired, where do you start for exercise? And that's a valid question. One of the things you have to kind of trust me on, it gives you energy. It gives you energy to exercise. It does take energy to do the planning that you need to do and to get things together, but it does help with brain fog. And there's a few reasons why. One of them is, depending on the kind of exercise you're doing, if you're doing exercise that is burning off excess energy that you have, then now you've burned off some of that stress and you'll come into a better state of mind. Sometimes it does clear the fog. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you just keep ruminating on a particular thought and you can't stop thinking about it. And then you go into a class and you do some dance or running or something that you enjoy usually, right? It should be something that you like once you're doing it. And then somewhere in the middle of a class, you'll realize that you're not thinking about that thing anymore. It's just not so much of an issue. So definitely exercise helps. Find yourself a way to do it that's not going to be too hard. Like I was just back and forth with a friend yesterday about exercise, and she said that, there's no way she can possibly do it. That's a mindset problem, which is totally understandable. You're not making it up. It does seem impossible, okay? I'm not minimizing that. But it is something that you can work around and find a way. So this book, Next Level, written by Tracy T. Sims with Celine Yeager, is an amazing resource. I didn't want to get it because it's an exercise book. And as I said, I don't love exercise. But their explanation of perimenopause, the way they broke it down was so good. It made so much sense and explained it in a way that made sense for anybody to understand. You don't have to have a science or exercise background to understand this stuff. And you can pick a sample exercise. So they have like just pictures of like rolling out with a foam roller, how to do a dowel hip opener, really, really simple stuff. And then you can work your way up to lifting heavy, and lifting heavy has been shown to be good for bone mass and building muscle and not losing the muscle that happens as we get into mid-age. But honestly, any exercise counts. So you can start with something simple like going for a swim once a week and then going for a walk once a week and then build from there. Make it something really simple. Like what I did is I picked a Zumba class that I liked. I would do that. And I worked with a personal trainer in a group training session once a week. I did that. And that's twice a week already that you've gone to the gym. That's a huge win. Make it really accessible and then experiment by doing a little bit of check in before you exercise and after you exercise. The one thing I will say, and I mentioned this before, if you're in a bad state that morning, say you planned on going on the rower at the gym and doing some weights, but you wake up and you had a horrible sleep, you're just not feeling good, maybe that's the day you go for a nature walk. You'll have to try and stay flexible and not be rigid. Make it simple. Keep it simple. All right, so now we are on question number 8. I can't remember what I was going to ask you. It's kind of a joke, right? I'm so embarrassed that I'm avoiding people. So forgetting what you're going to ask, this is a real problem and it does come up. One of the things that I've found helps me most is just talking around whatever it was that I was going to ask. So, the question here is, I'm so embarrassed I'm avoiding people. The embarrassment comes when we're like, what was I going to say? What was I going to say? I can't remember. And then we kind of get stuck in this. Now we're getting stressed out. We might have a hot flash because stress does increase that, and now we're embarrassed because we're having a hot flash and all of those things. More reason to avoid stimulation in other people. What I found is telling someone, I can't quite remember what I was going to ask you, and then talking about what we were talking about before the question popped into my mind helps me sometimes to remember. But basically, you have to make sure that you don't get stressed out about not being able to remember. You want to stay in the flow of the conversation. I often remind myself if it actually was important, I will remember. And then sure enough, it does come back a few minutes later. And I've had to check myself because I have a tendency now to interrupt people more than I ever did before because I'm worried I'm going to forget what I'm going to say. So when I do that, I'll tell someone I'm interrupting because I'm worried I'm going to forget, and I wanted to make sure to mention da 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 da. And people are pretty understanding about that. I'm also really careful about who I'm spending my time with and what kind of energy I put into relationships. Like I had a phone call yesterday with a friend, and it wasn't really going very well, and I was starting to feel tired, and I felt that I had said everything I needed to say. They were expressing a concern, a valid concern, but something that really has nothing to do with me personally. It's nothing that I did or that I can do anything about. So they need to deal with that. And they do need help. They do need help, right? But it doesn't have to come from me. That's one of the things that happens when you're letting things fall away. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It just means they will need to address this situation themselves. So pick the people a little more carefully if you can. Okay, so work situations, you can't really pick who's working with you. But for socializing, like last night we went for a walk with friends who are in our age group and we've known them a long time. So it was very non-stressful. And then, you know what? I got tired. I got tired after a little while and I just wanted to go back to the car and go home. So I told them that. And it's fine with them because they understand what I'm going through because they're also going through similar things. So don't worry about feeling embarrassed. It's a reaction because you have a change in your cognitive function. It's normal to have that moment. It's fine to just say, aha, I feel like I'm a little embarrassed about this. What can I do? And honestly, I find telling people is the very best thing to do and then rolling with it. All right, so question number 9. Sometimes it's so bad that I'm wondering if am developing early onset dementia, and that's terrifying. Okay, I'm going to say that again because I fumbled that one. Sometimes it's so bad that I wonder if I'm developing early onset dementia, and that's terrifying. Okay, so you're not alone in this either. A lot of us end up kind of being, so out of it, especially if we're not sleeping well, or if we have another health condition on top of it, or if, sometimes we actually develop things like ADHD. They come up, maybe we were masking it earlier in life and we can't anymore. And it can look like I'm forgetting my appointments, I'm showing up on the wrong day, I'm getting mad at people for mistakes that I made because I didn't even realize I made a mistake. And that can be really terrifying, especially if you have someone in dementia, like who has dementia in your family, like I did. My dad had dementia and my mom too, but I wasn't involved in her care. Later in life, she was in a care facility in another province. So I didn't see a lot of that. But it's probably not early onset dementia. If you're really worried about your cognitive function, though, I encourage you to go and talk to your doctor about it. I talked to my doctor about it. She, reassured me that that's probably not what's going on, but I felt so concerned about like I went from getting A's in all of my classes to having trouble finishing my last psychology class. I had 3 extensions, I think. I had to get an exception to get the last extension so that I could finish. And the best I could do was a B. I was so worried about that I wanted to do the full psychological educational assessment just to know, like, am I having memory problems? Is there actually an issue here? Because that's one of the things that they look for. They look for signs of ADHD, they look for signs of autism, and they look for, I have a kind of dyslexia. So everything came out okay. I do still have dyslexia. That's something that is, it doesn't get better. You just learn to manage it in different ways, like doing this video. So don't ignore the fear. If you're worried about having early onset dementia, go and ask for more testing. There's a memory test that your family doctor can do. And personally, I don't think it's all that great. My dad is he was a kind of a genius and a lot of it was math oriented. I would fail that test, but I don't have memory problems, right? So that's why I went and got the psychoeducational assessment done. And, the psychologist thought that I probably could go back to school with better accommodations and do okay. But I made the decision to delay that indefinitely because it was too stressful and I didn't want to stress myself out about anything else anymore. Okay, so the gist is it's probably not. It's probably not dementia. So don't buy into the terror. Go get help. And then question number 10. How come nobody prepared me for brain fog? It seems so common that I can't believe we weren't warned about this. And this question, I think, could be across the board for the whole perimenopause experience. Why weren't we warned about this? I don't know. I do think that it's part of the patriarchal society just kind of minimizing and dismissing women's health issues as not important, and we'll put it over there because who cares anyway. I did have a friend talking to me about brain fog much before I had it myself. And I feel bad because I didn't really believe her that it was that bad. I mean, I believed her personal experience, but now I've done over 100 calls with different women in my CPMS, Canadian Perimenopause and Menopause Support Group. And it's bad. It's really bad. And we weren't prepared for it. So you're kind of behind the 8 ball. You have to learn about it and figure out what's going on. So, there's I have so many books here that have different mentions of different symptoms. And this is one of my favorite ones, The Hormone Cure by Sarah Gottfried, who's changed her name to Sazal. It's a little bit older, but most of the information is still perfectly valid. So this is a book that you may want to look into. And it has some good quizzes to help you figure out what is going on with yourself and what you might want to do. And she has very, very many mentions of brain fog. So if we just pick one of them, on page 20, she's talking about tension and overwhelm, and feeling frazzled and ashamed. So that's one of the things that can happen that feeds into the brain fog, feeling frazzled and ashamed. But she's giving you hope here that you can shift back towards balance. She's so funny too. I did a class with her, so I'm really loving Sarah Gottfried. She's a great advocate for health, and she has a podcast too. So if you like listening, she's a good resource. Okay. Now, question number 11. Now that I've actually had brain fog, I feel so bad for not understanding what my friends have said about having brain fog. What's the best way to deal with explaining this to people who haven't experienced it themselves, or seem unsympathetic? Explaining it to people who seem unsympathetic and haven't experienced it themselves, like that's a tough order. That's a tall order. What is the main ingredient in communication between two people? And I firmly believe this, it's that the other person wants to understand you. If the other person has already decided that you're full of it, or that they don't care what you have to say, or that you're just going to make a bunch of excuses, or you're trying to be lazy, if they really believe that, good luck explaining it to them. It's not going to happen. So that's the first thing to ask. Do you actually want to know? Are you really genuinely interested in what it's like? And then what I've said to people before is, like, if you have a really bad sleep and you wake up in the morning and maybe you're hungover and you really can't form a sentence or figure out what to do next, you're really kind of at a loss. That's what brain fog is. But instead of it kind of going away after you get in the shower, it sort of hangs on for the rest of the day, maybe. And, for a lot of us, and myself included, what usually happens is as the day goes on, it clears more and more. And so by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm not having as much brain fog. That's why I suspect that it's also related to cortisol, and the stress hormone coming down as the day goes by could be why things like exercise help women to feel better, more centered and grounded and clearer minded. You'll have to try and talk to the person in their language. So if you have someone who's an athlete, you can think of, like, if they've ever had a concussion, and you can explain brain fog as like having a mild concussion, because it is sort of like that. You're kind of out of it, and you maybe can't focus on things the way you used to, and you might need more rest. So try and find what their language is, what makes sense to them, and then explain it to them in terms that they can understand. All right, now we're on to question number 12. I used to be so smart. I worked multiple jobs, taking care of kids and elderly, but yesterday I strained my chicken broth down the drain. I feel so stupid making mistakes like this. What can I do about making stupid mistakes? One of the things I want to point out in this question is this is a real life situation from my life. I did that one time. Broth on the stove, cooking all day, strainer in the sink, gone down the drain. And then I felt really stupid. And I had to do like a deep dive. What is that all about? Not only have I made a mistake that, it's annoying, a waste, but now I'm hurting myself. I'm calling myself stupid. And I'm defining it as a mistake when, it would have been preferable to not do that. But there was no negative consequence to putting the broth down the sink. It's not like I cut someone off in traffic and caused an accident. It's a pretty minor issue. So mindset can really help you with stuff like this. It's not going to prevent you from making stupid mistakes. The things you can do to prevent yourself from making stupid mistakes are, get a lot of sleep, eat nutritious food, exercise on the regular, make sure you're not skipping out on your supplements, take your magnesium, take your fish oil, drink enough water, keep your stress down. And beyond that, how are you going to prevent brain fog? It's just not possible to prevent stupid mistakes all the time. Sometimes it happens. So it's again another situation where really you want to practice rolling with it. Try laughing at yourself. Laughing is excellent medicine. See if you can bounce back. Make it a challenge. How quickly can I bounce back from making a mistake? And see if you can get really good at it. We're not going to be able to prevent making mistakes. So I do find though that having a system in place helps. Like when I make broth, I put it on in the morning, I let it boil for a while, I put it into the crock pot if I'm going out so it's not going to boil over. And then I have a system of containers that I'm going to freeze the broth in, ready to go on the counter. And that kind of gives me a visual cue of what I'm going to do. And I'm less likely to skip a step and make a mistake like that. So whenever you can find a method to what kind of job you're doing, that will help you to make less mistakes and have less issues in that way. Okay, I think I'm going to do one more because I feel like I can. So I've gone on to number 13. I tried all the things that usually help, and nothing is snapping me out of the fog today. What should I do to get through my day? So this question is really important because I just experienced this last week where I woke up in a brain fog situation. I was supposed to write about brain fog and I couldn't do anything. I could not write that day. It wasn't going to happen. I wouldn't have been able to make a video like this that day. So I figured out other things that I could do that would still get me towards my goal of doing these chapters and answering these questions, but that didn't really require me to be very with it. Like, for example, I knew that I wanted to get this book, The Menopause Brain. It was on my list of books to get. It was part of my plan to get this book for this chapter. So I ordered it online and I went and picked it up from the store at Indigo, and I had a look at it and had checked out some stuff on brain fog. So figure out, what can I do to get through my day? What can I modify? What can I change? What can I go about differently? Is there something that I can get a friend to help me with? Or is there something that I can just rewrite on my list for tomorrow? Or something else like that would contribute to that goal that you have? For example, like maybe if you're having really bad brain fog and you are going to drive somewhere and you decide that you don't want to drive that day, maybe there's a way you can do it by walking. You can walk somewhere to get something done. Ordering things online instead of going out to physically get them. Um, see how creative you can get. It is a challenge, but if you make it fun like a game, then that really helps and makes a big difference. I took that opportunity to get the book that I wanted to get and do it in a way that was fun. I also ordered a bag that I thought was neat, and that made it kind of like going shopping, but with that end goal in mind of getting a material that I need in order to do these chapters. So who can help you? What can you dump? What can you go about differently? And how can you make it as easy on yourself as possible with no judgment? Because if you're having a really bad brain fog day and you did the drinking water and you did the exercise and you did the tapping and you jumped up and down and you know, all the things and it didn't help, then, you know, you have to modify. Okay, so I think that's good. We've got up to the 13th question already. So I it took me 2 hours to actually go through and adjust my transcript. So if anybody has any hints on how to get rid of what I don't need is my name a million times and the seconds of the video. I went through and did a Google search and figured it out, but it didn't actually change it. Those things were still there when all was said and done. So let's just keep in touch with me if you have questions, and I plan on doing this every day until my 2 chapters are done. And thanks a lot for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Take care.